This is the Observations Podcast for Sunday, the 14th of July, 2024. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Dale Franks.
I'm Michael Wade. Happy Bastille Day.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it being Bastille Day today. I guess there's very little doubt about what this podcast conversation is going to concern, is there? I hardly know where to begin. There's so much to unpack about what happened and perhaps why, and the responses to it, that it's difficult to know where to begin. I collected a whole bunch of stuff yesterday, though, and we'll try to go through it in some semblance of order. And I think the first thing that I want to talk about is, can we scroll? There we go. It's stuff like this. Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans are a threat to the very soul of this country. Okay. Donald Trump is a genuine threat to this nation. He's a threat to our freedom. He's a threat to our democracy. He's literally a threat to everything America stands for. How much of a threat? Well, maybe he's Adolf Hitler. The cover of the New Republic for June. American fascism, what it would look like, with all the usual suspects at the Atlantic weighing in on how, Donald Trump is essentially a reincarnation of Adolf Hitler. And I guess we have to begin there. Actually, there's something else that I wanted to share now that we're here. And of course, these are the Democrats who are, thinking that this both saved Joe Biden's nomination and doomed his campaign. But let me go back here to one of these quotes. And now I can't find it, but it was a guy who was talking about Donald Trump, and he could not help himself, even in this article. And I hope they haven't changed
Excised
this
it.
here, excised it, because he went right down the line about Donald Trump. Oh yeah, here we go. I'm very concerned that the net effect of the Republican convention will be neutralizing the core democracy critique of Trump, a felon who fomented a violent insurrection, tried to block the peaceful transfer of power, said the Constitution may need to be terminated. There's a race to define the democracy critique of Trump as legitimate, and we all need to make it clear now that protecting democracy is the exact opposite of political violence. Is it?
Yeah, and under whose definition?
If the guy is Adolf Hitler, and this is one of the things that got me yesterday with, our thoughts and prayers go out to Donald Trump from all the Democrats.
Yeah.
Do they? Why?
Yeah, that makes no sense.
If he is a threat to democracy, to the extent that you say he is, why wouldn't some sort of, shall we call it, extrajudicial intervention be imposed to ensure that he doesn't destroy our democracy? And here's a follow-on question. What if the American people actually want him to be president? Then isn't taking that choice away from them a flagrant violation of the principles of democracy? This is
certainly anti-democratic, yeah.
Yeah, this is not an intellectually coherent argument that Donald Trump is a direct threat to democracy. He will destroy the soul of our nation, to quote President Biden. And yet all we can do is try to beat him at the ballot box. And if we don't, well,
It sucks to be here.
it sucks to be here, I guess. Guess it's time to, get that passport and see if we can get a visa to, I don't know,
Singapore,
Australia, wherever, New Zealand. I don't believe that the Democrats, despite what they say, actually believe that Donald Trump is, in fact, a threat to democracy. And they can't answer one simple question. If he's such a threat to democracy, and he tried to overthrow the government and all of that stuff, and we're worried about that, then why did he walk out of the White House on January 20th, 2021?
right? And why didn't any of these tyrannical tendencies show up during his 4 years as president when it seemed like every Hawaiian judge?
Yeah, every whack job federal
available.
judge. Yeah, every whack job federal judge in Hawaii said, no, you can't have this policy. You can't issue this executive order. And not once did he say, unlike
Screw you.
Joe Biden.
Exact opposite.
Yeah, Joe Biden was told by the Supreme Court he could not do what he was going to do with student loans. And his response was very similar to Andrew Jackson's.
Right.
Justice Marshall has made his ruling. Now let him enforce it.
Once a Democrat, always a Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, of the two people who are running, if we take a look at the historical fidelity to the judicial process that they've shown over the last 2 years, only one of them has shown that sort of deference.
That's absolutely the correct word. Only Trump has actually shown the deference to the court. And this has been on every single challenge to every single one of his rules, policies, executive orders. And every time a court said no, he said, okay, we're going to work through the court system to rectify this. He didn't say, well, I'll just do it another way. Or screw you, court. I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yeah, he actually obeyed what the court said. Here is the trouble. And I think, what's his name from Black 5? Uncle Jimbo, Jim Hansen. He tweeted something yesterday that said, whenever you have this type of rhetoric, Donald Trump is Hitler, he will destroy our democracy, all of this garbage that has been spouted about Donald Trump, in complete opposition to how he actually acted as president when he was governing. When you use that kind of rhetoric, you cannot then turn around when someone takes a shot at Donald Trump and then say, oh, well, that's beyond the pale. Why is it? You have said, and I think, who was it? George Takei, Mr. Sulu, tweeted today, well, we shouldn't be shooting at Donald Trump, but he is an existential threat to our democracy. One of those two things.
Why shouldn't we be shooting at him?
Yeah, one of those two things can't be true.
Existential threat. Right. I mean, that's just it. I mean, if you had a shot at Hitler, I mean, that's the famous question, right? If you had a shot at Hitler, would you take it? And of course the answer is, well, hell yeah.
Yeah,
but I mean, it wouldn't have really changed much probably, but it's the same concept. If you had a chance to take out a Hitlerian dictator before he could do damage, wouldn't you do it? Well, with perfect foresight, yeah, absolutely. I'd risk my life for that.
Sure, although that reminds me of this guy that did a little comedy short on YouTube, where it's a time-traveling comedy short, and there's a bright light, and this guy comes back, and he says, what happened? And the guy that comes back says, well, I just got back from 1939, and I killed Oskar Gruber, the most horrible dictator Germany ever had. It's like he killed like 5,000 Jews. And the guy went, oh no. The point being is that you don't really know I mean, that's you don't even know if you went back into the past and killed Adolf Hitler as a baby. You don't know that something very much like Nazism might not have come up in the
I
1920s and
think it would have
1930s
anyway.
anyway.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
I think it was coming either way. Hitler was a perfect figurehead and certainly a charismatic being at the time, but there were plenty of others who were instrumental not only in enforcing and building up the Nazi regime, but in pushing the ideology as well.
yeah, as it, most people don't realize that the Nazi Party was just one of a fairly large number of far right parties that were part of more or less a movement to
Well,
destroy
not
the
far right, but
well, yeah, what we are told is the far right, but nationalist movements who actually wanted a do-over of World War One,
yeah,
and
and they wanted to punish the communists.
and here's the thing: if we can't even accurately say that going back into the past, which we know well, if we can't actually go back and predict what would happen if we changed something like Adolf Hitler, died of tuberculosis as an 11-year-old. Okay, what historical change would that have made? I don't think it's possible for us to know. And if we don't know
Yeah,
the past, we certainly can't know the future.
right.
And to sit there and say that if Donald Trump gets elected, he'll destroy our democracy, really? I mean, the American people, as quickly as they knuckle under for COVID, do you think that would happen? Do you think that this would happen without any pushback at all? Either,
Yeah, it creates a moral imperative.
yeah, either institutional pushback or just popular pushback against destroying our form of government. It's almost as if, and this is, I think, the fundamental problem that occurred to me today when I was thinking about this. It's as if the Democrats regard the president as a sort of elected king
Hmm.
whose powers are more or less unlimited and to whom we are helpless to resist if the president decides that something is so.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how Woodrow Wilson basically described it. The pesky Constitution kept getting in his way, and he complained about that bitterly because he was elected, he was the God King, and he was supposed to be making the rules so that everybody's lives would be better off because only he knew what was best for everyone. This was a common plaint from him.
And by the way, it takes me back to the Democrats' response to Chevron,
Yeah.
which is, well, if you say the president has absolute immunity for his core constitutional duties, that means he can send SEAL Team 6. Boy, doesn't it suck to be in SEAL Team 5? Nobody thinks that you're a winner if you're in SEAL Team 5.
Not to mention 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, so, he can send out SEAL Team 6 to kill his political opponents, and he's untouchable.
That was the Trump case, not Chevron, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, the Trump case, not Chevron. But again, it was the same response from Chevron, which we'll get to.
Right.
But yeah, in that case, the president can just do anything. No man can stop him. That tells me what their concept of the presidency is, and it's frightening.
Yeah.
And to go to
Absolutely.
Chevron, which I sort of switched horses in midstream, the idea that the president's executive agencies can't simply declare by fiat via regulation what the law is. And it's being treated. I saw there's this guy on YouTube, a guy who up until a couple of weeks ago I used to really like for his legal analysis of cases. And in both the Trump decision and the Chevron decision, he came out and talked about what a disaster it was. And now with Chevron, the federal government has lost all of its power, and now nothing can be regulated, and the water will be polluted. We have laws. We have Congress. It doesn't require a monarch who has absolute control of everything the government does in order to make us safe. Bless you, by the way. And because of that concept of what the president is and what he does and what he's supposed to do, which I think is as aconstitutional as possible, that's the reason why there's this fear of Donald Trump.
Right. I mean, it's a common saw amongst the right that the left projects, and what they accuse the right of doing, they're doing themselves. And it's actually pretty true. I mean, you can see it all the time. And like you're saying, they project how they see the presidency and what its power is and what they want its power to be onto the right in order to scare people. But they have those exact same intentions. They just think that their motives are pure. It's kind of uncanny. I mean, Hamilton wouldn't even recognize where the Democrats are as far as the expansion of the presidency and the executive um, power. He would be, I think, pretty turned off by how it's turned out.
Yeah, because that's not, we called
That's
it,
not what he asked for.
back in Nixon's day, we called it the imperial presidency.
Right.
And one of the things that, both Jerry Ford and Jimmy Carter tried to do was to get away from this idea of the president as the imperial president. But it's an idea that keeps coming back. There is an argument that some have made that monarchy is kind of the natural governmental state of man, that we crave it because at least there is a unitary power to whom we can either appeal or overthrow.
Yeah. Overthrow.
Yeah. Well, but I think if you're going to sit there and say over and over and over, and I could come up, I'm not going to do it. You could find it easy enough yourself, but I could come up with, let's see, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Hakeem Jeffries, basically every major Democrat parroting Chuck Schumer, all parroting the same line. Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. He is a threat to our way of government. And if he if he takes over, he will destroy America. Which, A, as I said, belies an idea of what they think the presidency does and what its powers are, and B, severely underestimates the American public's willingness to be subjected to that sort of rule.
Yeah, Fred Thompson said it long time ago when I guess back when he was running for president, that for the most part, Americans just want to be left alone. Please get out of my way. Please stop bugging me with all these nagging peculiarities that really have nothing to do with my life. Stop forcing things down my throat. Just back off. And he's absolutely right. I don't care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, left or right. That is how most people in America feel. We're kind of fiercely independent in our own ways. But that's not something the left can tolerate. They need to be in control of everything. And this is why the bureaucratic state has grown for decades. The era of big government's over. Well, not so much.
No, it's only over until we decide it's good to bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
And once we do, then we have to try to figure out how to cut it, which is almost impossible to do. But if you're going to say that Donald Trump is this horrible person who's going to destroy democracy, it rings hollow whenever there's an assassination attempt on him, then to come back and say, well, we would never want political violence for this threat against this threat to our democracy. Why not?
I mean, how many times did Joe threaten to take him behind the high school gym and beat the shit out of him? There have been so many just blatant wishes and I guess, fantasies about harming Trump, killing him, badly wounding him, duck marching him into jail. I mean, the fantasies on the left are far and wide. And
well, last week there was that debate between Peter Thiel and Reid Hoffman. And Peter Thiel made a comment at the end of this debate about, congratulations. You've made him a political martyr. And Reid Hoffman shot back, I wish I'd have made him a real martyr.
Yeah. I mean, that's their fantasy. That's what they see as most important. This world cannot run unless we are running it. And that's all they mean by democracy. It's run by Democrats.
And by the way,
That's really all they mean.
just some random results from yesterday.
Yeah.
Sad they missed, glad they tried. Damn it, they missed. I'm not calling for someone to take him out. I'm just saying I'm sad that they missed. Twitter is full of that.
Yeah, whatever.
And
I'd rather them talk about it than do it.
Yeah, that's true. And also there's also just the insane response. So there was this from yesterday. It's not far-fetched to suggest this was staged. We've reached a point in society and American politics where a candidate would do something extreme, like have a shot graze a body part.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I can't even describe how batshit crazy that is. Sure, I'm going to trust you at 135 yards away to graze my ear with a rifle bullet.
Just graze.
Just graze. Yeah. This is not the movies. Guns don't work that way.
Shooting into a vortex of wind doesn't work that way.
Yeah, these aren't lasers we're firing. This is crazy. And of course, you don't know anything about bullets or guns other than what you see in the movies. It sounds perfectly reasonable, but it's insanity. It's a disconnect from reality, and it's a cope, right? It's a cope that people actually, especially on the left, and by the way, why wouldn't they? The government officials of the United States are saying this guy is a direct threat, an existential threat to our democracy. They are giving their imprimatur, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, be a shame if something happened to him.
Yeah, look, I mean,
who shall rid me of this turbulent priest?
Right. If it came to light tomorrow that there is positive proof, undeniable, that Jesus Christ never even existed, there's a lot of people in this world who will never, ever, ever believe that. It's baked into the cake. They have centered their entire lives around this system and around this ideal. That's exactly what you're seeing on the left when it comes to secularism. That they worship secularism and they worship the upholders of secularism. And in their eyes, that means beating down any religion and taking out anybody who might challenge the supremacy of the federal government. Their worldview is a little rocked right now. They are the ones who are committing the crimes, committing the potential assassinations. They did it against Steve Scalise and the other Republicans on the field. They did it against Rand Paul, his neighbor. They did it against Chick-fil-A. They've done it a lot of times, and more numerous. Hell, we can go to Nashville and the trans shooter, all the trans shooters. We have myriad instances of this happening, and it's because of the rhetoric. And now I'm not a big fan of the idea that rhetoric is the ultimate cause of this, but you turn up the temperature enough, and this has been a favorite talking point of the left since at least 1963 in Dallas, that turning up the rhetoric and turning up the potential heat is what causes assassinations. Well, here's your humble pie. Have some.
Yeah, it's funny, all of the warnings that we have constantly gotten for the last 20 years about how Nazism is descending. And yet, when you look at the actual political violence that's being committed, a lot of it's on the left, not the right.
Yeah, a good deal of it. Matter of fact, the right's presidential candidate, they're hopeful, was an attempted assassination was made on his life yesterday. Not one city burned during the night or suburbs. There was no rioting. There were no attacking of federal public buildings. There was no picketing of the Secret Service or the White House. None of that happened. There's a big difference between the right and the left.
Yeah, odd that, huh?
Yeah.
Second point, the news media. You may think you hate the media, but however much you think you hate them, you don't hate them enough. Associated Press.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Now, once again, I will point out that all of the headlines I am going to show are real, and they are technically factual headlines.
Right.
So no lies have been told in any of these headlines. So
Mrs. Lincoln didn't enjoy the play, so they left.
Trump taken away after loud noises at rally. Okay. Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he falls at rally. Technically, this is not true. Technically, he didn't fall.
It's true.
Technically, he threw himself to the ground.
Ducked and covered.
That's not a fall. Now, look, there's a lot of people who will say, well, this is just coming in the immediate moments after the assassination attempt. It's the rough first draft of history. Obviously, these things get updated. Okay, sure. So what would happen if we waited a day and looked at a newspaper headline from the next morning? Perhaps, let's say, the Sunday Denver Post. Again, completely factual headline. But none of these headlines are the story.
Bright sunny day and Trump leaves the stage.
Yeah, I mean,
also factual.
That is just... Oh, there is a little overhead. Trump says he was shot in ear.
Oh, well, Trump says.
Trump
Can't
says.
believe that shit.
Who knows if it's true or not? He just,
Only there was some video.
He says all kinds of things. Donald Trump.
I love that. Do you have any of the pieces that suggest it was glass that cut his ear?
No, I didn't capture any of those yesterday because, by the way,
there was a bunch of those as well.
But of course, the news was reporting it wasn't really a bullet. It was actually just glass from the teleprompter. Of course, when you see the video, both of the teleprompters are fine. Neither one of them are touched. Now, I will have to point out, this is an amazing shot that was taken.
Oh, is this the one of the bullet going by?
Yeah. Now, this is amazing.
Wow.
So this is what it looks like when an object's traveling at 3,000 feet per second, more or less. I don't know what the actual bullet velocity would be after 135 yards. Muzzle velocity of a M16 or AR-15, a 223 in general, is around 3,000. So let's say 2,600 feet per second. And this is what a bullet looks like whenever your shutter is open for 1/500th of a second.
Mm-hmm.
You see that streak, and that is the first shot. That is an amazing photograph. That of course, it's complete luck. It's just timing.
Yeah.
For that to show. But anyway, I mean, yeah, there was some good journalism there. For example, the AP photographer who will undoubtedly be receiving a Pulitzer Prize for this
Absolutely,
shot.
yeah.
Because this
Well,
is
I told you last night that it reminded me of the George Bush on top of the rubble with the with the megaphone.
Yeah, exactly. It's that same kind of iconic shot. And by the way, notice the teleprompter over here is just fine. There's no shattered glass. It's still perfectly functional. The reporting, of course, is always bad. I mean, you get these stories like it was the glass. You had this other story that came out, and this is the other thing that happens, and it irks me to no end that people do this. And it's this poor bastard right here who
Oh yeah.
is some Italian soccer blogger in Italy. And there were a whole bunch of posts saying the shooter's been identified as Antifa member Mark Violet. His actual name is Marco Violetti, or Marco Violi. And he does soccer. This poor bastard just woke up this morning and learned that he was a possible shooter of Donald Trump.
Hey, well, he got it back today when Spain won.
But given that, yes, these events, it's very fast paced. It shocks everybody. It's one of those, historical events that you happen to find yourself in the middle of and you have to try to do reporting on it. There's going to be bad reporting. You're going to get some things wrong.
Fog of war, all that. Yeah.
But the headlines that you write are requiring some thought. Because now we can't just pass this off as, bad reporting, or I heard a wrong story, or eyewitnesses were confused. Dear God, don't even get me started on how confused eyewitness testimony at an event like this would be, because everybody sees all kinds of weird stuff that may or may not have ever happened. Eyewitness testimony is always problematic. But when you're writing the headline, the story is done. Now we have to think about how we're going to describe the story. Trump falls, loud noises, or the day after, gunman killed in attack. That's intentional. That's not a...
I don't know which one you add to that. Yes, it is.
You are intentionally obfuscating what happened during that attack.
Downplaying.
Yeah, you're downplaying it. And I think one of the reasons why they're downplaying it, and one of the reasons why they think it looks so bad, is this story from, NBC. The presidential contest ended last night. That's the fear. This is going to provide either a sympathy vote or something like that for Donald Trump.
Yeah, it absolutely galvanized his base and probably turned a lot of leaners towards him. And Joe Biden, was not exactly doing very well before this. I think this may be the final nail in the coffin, or maybe the penultimate one, but it's... I don't see a way out for the Democrats at this point. I don't care who stands on the ballot.
Yeah, but look, the politics aside, getting back to the press, now we're not looking at reportage. Now we're looking at after the fact analysis. And what do we get? Republicans pounce.
Yeah, right. We're getting Democratic wish casting and Republicans pounce stories.
So there is that. Of course, photo of bloodied Trump fist bumping immediately spotlighted by his allies. Yeah, that's the problem.
Duh.
They didn't respond properly to him being shot.
I thought it was interesting that the New York Times cut out the American flag for their front page photo from that very picture.
Oh, well, yeah, of course. The picture is too powerful. It has... just the composition, just everything.
It's just iconic.
But look, there's a reason why this is iconic. And this is another thing that I wanted to bring up. He was on stage, he was speaking, he technically got shot in the head. Yes, it just grazed his ear. But talk to anybody, military people who've been in combat, cops who've been in life-threatening situations. When this stuff happens, and it happens as a surprise, there's no forewarning, you're now in a life or death situation. The way that you respond may not tell us much about whether you're a good person or a bad person, but it does tell us about your personality and to a certain extent about your character and your strength of will.
Your resolve, absolutely.
Your resolve, your physical courage. And what Donald Trump did by throwing his fist out immediately after he got up, and his first thought was not, apparently, get me off of this stage, get me back in that bulletproof SUV. His first thought was to clench his fist, raise it, move that female Secret Service agent out of the way right there. I mean, he just basically kind of pushed her head out of the way, raised his fist, and yelled, "Fight, fight, fight," 3 times. So his first thought was not one of personal safety. His first thought was one of defiance. I have to admit, I'm a little surprised to see that sort of resolve from the man. But now that I've seen it, it does tell me something about his character. And that his first thought was not for himself.
Yeah.
And that's not something you can fake.
No, not at that moment. It gave you the sense that he's actually trying to do something important, and that the Americans and his voters matter more than himself. That's the impression that I was left with. It was inspiring. It was, well, like you said, it was defiant. And I think a lot of people want that. I know I do. I'm tired of feckless government that doesn't do anything. I mean, I want them to do as little as possible. I'm not saying I want them to do all sorts of stuff, but there are certain things that they should be doing that they're not. Our military is in shambles. Our foreign policy is in shambles. Our domestic policy is in shambles. Certainly our border policy is in shambles. These are things that presidents are supposed to take care of. Biden is just, he's, not even at the podium for this stuff. He's an absolute moron with pudding brain and can't handle this. And whoever's advising him and really running the country, they're not doing a very good job either.
Yeah, well, as Sean Moeller points out in chat, in referring to Trump yelling, "Fight, fight, fight." And by the way, he did it more than once because he wouldn't even let them shove him into the SUV without standing up on the running board one last time and throwing that fist up. It was like all he could think of at that moment, the first thing that ran through his mind was reassuring the crowd.
Yep.
Not himself, not his own personal safety. Frankly, based on the other character traits that he often shows, I found that a bit surprising and a bit reassuring. But not
I think
everyone,
he's still narcissistic. I don't think that's changed.
Yeah, but not everyone felt that way.
Yeah.
There were several news articles and opinion articles written about how he should not have done that. He should have tried to unify the nation. He shouldn't.
I saw that one.
He shouldn't have stoked the rage. This sort of cry bullying.
Yeah, there was some news anchor. I can't remember if it was NBC or ABC. some woman who was like, I just want to note that he didn't tell his supporters to calm down and to, lower the temperature. Why didn't he do that? Because he was just fucking shot, you idiot.
Yeah. Let me wing a couple of rounds past you, and let's see what your first response is.
Right. It's not going to be, oh, let's all be friends.
Yeah. And I think the topper from the media has to be this. Little horse shouldn't have been wearing such a short skirt.
Yep. So I've noticed this today. I rarely go on Twitter anymore, X, whatever. And, but since last night, I've been kind of trolling it just to kind of see, what's out there, what people are saying. And I swear to God, the both sidisms, the whataboutisms, I saw, what's her face? Andrea, one of the old hags, blonde woman, Andrea Mitchell, talking about how, really it's kind of Trump's fault that because of the rhetoric. And this was a popular comment amongst the Sunday news anchors and talking heads that, well, Trump, he raised the temperature. And so this is what happens. And so he really needs to lower the temperature.
Yeah.
It's just like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's Donald Trump's responsibility. Because Donald Trump's rhetoric is just, beyond the pale. It's not the sort of argumentation on policy that we expect to hear in an enlightened democracy like ours. And no one on the left would engage in that sort of inflammatory rhetoric in the context of a normal political campaign, would they?
And they certainly wouldn't, try to pass a bill that would take away Secret Service protection from Donald Trump amidst a campaign. They would never do that because, that's boiling the temperature up a little too high.
Yeah, but there's the argument in a nutshell.
Yep.
Yeah, the extremism from the MAGA movement. Of course, when we say that Donald Trump is Adolf Hitler, that's a perfectly reasonable and responsible type of rhetoric. And we would never expect it to, lead to any sort of violence.
Because, Hitler was so famous for trying to get the government off the backs of people.
Yeah. I will say this before moving on to the next section. The humor displayed by the American people, even in tough and traumatic circumstances, is one of, I think, the best parts of our national character. So we have we have things like this. Why didn't they have the Secret Service on that roof? No reason to have the CIA and Secret Service on the same roof. That's a good one. And then, of course, there's this. In all seriousness, I think Biden will be very shaken by these events. He's seen this happen before, from Reagan, 1981, to Kennedy, 1963, and, of course, Julius Caesar, 44 BC. I mean, say what you want about the American people. Their ability to make light of a situation, even, at the worst of times.
Babylon B has had some good ones too. What was one of them was Trump indicted for encouraging assassination attempts.
Yeah. Margot Cleveland. I give it a month before Joe Biden starts recounting the time he was shot in the ear while campaigning.
I wouldn't even go that far. I think he starts doing it next week.
Yeah,
I remember I was shot in the ear. No joke. It's a true story.
You may be right. Of course, the question is, how, in fact, did Trump get shot in the ear from this location? So
this is going to be a question of intrigue for quite some time, unfortunately. But yes, how was this roof left undefended?
So this is outside the security cordon. So, and it's hard to see on full screen here. I wonder if I can hit Control Plus and make this. I can make it so big it goes away.
Sorry, I didn't mean to snort there.
Okay, well, that
didn't work. So Control minus.
That's not exactly what we wanted to see. But basically, if you can see, and I'll use my sort of mouse to point at it, even though my mouse cursor is a little small, this is more or less where Trump was on the stage. This building up here is where the shooter was and where he opened fire. There was a Secret Service counter sniper team on the roof. They're the ones who shot the guy in the head once he opened fire. And there are a lot of questions about why was this
outside? Why wasn't that building secured?
Yeah, why was this outside the security zone? And even though it's not shown, although you can see a tiny bit of it here, there is another building over here, although that would have been inside the security zone. And on the other side of this road that you can just barely see, this 4-lane road, apparently up here at the very top that cuts across diagonally. There are several buildings over there. Now, at that point, we are, 300 to 400 meters away. And
there are banners and stuff that are blocking sight along the road there as well.
Yeah, but by my count, and I didn't say that I should have, looking at this on Google Maps, my count was they needed 8 more people stationed on top of these buildings. Or there were 8 more.
Even one more person on that building that you're pointing at right now would have made a difference.
Yeah, just one person here would have made a difference. This is way too close to the stage. Now,
and too front centered. I mean, that's a direct line of sight.
Yeah. Now, former presidents and presidential candidates do not get the same security bubble that presidents get. They don't get the same kind of coverage. The security bubble is much smaller. They don't have the same number of personnel or what have you. So to a certain extent, some things are understandable, but this is just way too close. And it's literally, if you look, you can see there's sort of a fence line here. It's a chain link fence. And that's where the security zone ended. So this guy is literally 30 yards outside the security zone.
Right.
And it just seems like because of the free line of sight to that stage, someone should have been there.
Yeah. And if you go 2 trees over, go back up to that building where the shooter was, and then 2 trees over to the left. That one. Right about there is where there were people. The BBC News actually has been, with a blind reporter of all things, a guy named Doherty, tracked down this guy who was like, yeah, we alerted the police. We were like, hey, we can see the guy climbing up there. And we alerted the police. And then the AP just reported today that policemen went up to the roof and confronted the shooter. Shooter pointed the gun at the police officer who retreated. And then a couple minutes later, he shot Trump and killed a bystander and maimed at least 2 others, I believe.
Yeah, I'm actually going to try to find this again on satellite if I can. I mean, Butler, Pennsylvania is not a tiny town. I don't remember where this was. Oh, hey, this looks very familiar to me. That's because it's my town. So let me try this here. I should have done this before the podcast, so I crave your indulgence about trying to find Butler, Pennsylvania here and finding this thing. Now I don't remember where it is. It's this farm.
It's north of Pittsburgh.
Butler Farm Show. Yeah, no, I've got the city. I'm just trying to find the farm show area. It's Butler
Yeah, because
Farm
that's what
Show.
this was. This is where they
I'll
did
just share the
livestock
screen.
auctions and stuff.
Yeah. So there's Butler Farm Show Airport, and there we go, right there. That
Yeah,
is the venue.
right.
Okay, so now we can get a little better idea. We can zoom way in and see it full screen, and we can see what it was. So once again, this is where the shooter was, and this is where the sniper team was who shot it. Actually, I think the sniper team was here on this building who shot him. But you've also got this building right here. This is inside the security zone. There's this building right here, this one right here. There's the Farm Services Agency, M&R Power Equipment, the Mazda dealer. How you'd get on the roof of the Mazda dealer, I'm not sure, but it's there. But again, the difference between 135 yards from here to here. This way, you're at 350 yards. That's
Right.
okay.
That's a much tougher shot.
With an AR-15, especially 350 yards. Yeah,
That's at the outer limits of any accuracy. Yeah.
Yeah. The maximum effective range of an M16, as I had drilled into my head many times in the 10 years in which I carried one every day, the maximum effective range of an M16 is 460 meters. We define maximum effective range by your ability to hit a man-sized target at that range. That is somewhere on a man-sized target you've landed a hit. We're lucky, I think, that whoever this guy was had an AR-15. Because the AR-15,
Yeah, absolutely.
AR-15, a relatively accurate rifle. I'm not a fan of the AR platform personally for a couple of gun nut reasons that we won't
But they're
get
good.
into.
They're fairly accurate for at least a 250 yard range, and they don't have much kickback. They are a high-powered rifle. I mean, I think I would agree with that.
No, they're an
But
intermediate
not
caliber.
super high.
They're an intermediate
Yeah, I mean,
caliber
they're.
rifle.
I mean, 223 is not exactly overpowering.
No.
A 44 up close is low.
Yeah, but I mean, in the military and in police, sniper rifles are generally 308s,
Right.
7.62 NATO.
And
That's
a 308 has got to be one of the most common hunting rifles out there.
Yeah, between 308 and 30-06, and all a 308 is a 30-06 that's
It's just the Winchester,
a
right?
little smaller. If he'd have been using one of those, I think we might have a very different
It'd be a very
situation.
different outcome, I believe. Yes.
But the M16, while fairly accurate, is designed for hitting a man-sized target at normal engagement ranges, which we decided, for whatever reason, after World War II, should be, most engagements took place at 300 meters or less. And so we kind of switched over in the early 60s to the M16 because that was really what we figured the engagement ranges would be. And we thought the 30-06 and even the 308, the 7.62 NATO, we just thought that was overkill. And
I still like that 7.62.
go with a smaller round, and you can carry more of it because the ammo is much lighter, so you can
Right.
carry substantially more of it. For example, on a normal day, as an Air Force security policeman, I would carry an M16 in the United States with 120 rounds of ammunition. That was just my normal carry for an 8-hour shift. In Europe, the normal issue was 240 rounds of ammunition. That's what you carried every day. And you can carry it because it's 5.56 ammo. They're little bullets. They're not very heavy. And compare that to World War II, when your combat load of 30-06 was 96 rounds. Because 30-06 rounds are freaking heavy.
Well, and that was an M1 Garand, right?
Yeah, that was the M1. And of course, also, well, no, the M14, we went to the 7.62. So yeah, that was the last of the 30-06 rifles, the M1 and the M1A. In any event, we're lucky that he wasn't using a better rifle. But when you look
Yeah.
at this venue, and as I said, I went through and counted, how about this building way over here? That's clearly outside the security zone. Nobody was watching these. Well, I guess the counter sniper team over here probably would have been watching.
Had eyes on that, yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of buildings around there. If there would have been a president, I mean, look, when the president just drives through town, the Secret Service comes and makes you close all the windows in the buildings and, all kinds of stuff. They just don't do that for presidential candidates. So, granted, presidential candidates don't get the same bubble that the president gets. There's going to have to be a lot of questions asked about how this got through the loop.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are trying to blame it on the Biden administration. We're trying to blame it on this recently appointed USSS director, this woman who former secret security, right?
Yeah, Secret Service.
Secret Service, thank you. And I don't know. I don't know. Something was missed somewhere, and they do need to figure that out. The fact that there were people highlighting and pointing to the guy bear crawling up onto the roof, and that nothing happened. Well, not nothing, but not enough happened. That's just unconscionable. I still kind of wonder. Now, look, this is complete conjecture. I'm not trying to create a conspiracy theory or whatever. But I did bring it up to you last night that I almost wonder if Secret Service got a message fired first, because the pops, the way they happened in the video, and it's really hard to understand what's going on orally in a video because there's lots of echoes and stuff. So it's hard to really tell. Plus, the time between the time difference between sound and light.
Another issue, the number of shots, because we're hearing sound off of a microphone.
Yes.
So
you're hearing it on probably 3 or 4 microphones at once.
But are we hearing the shot itself, or are we hearing the sonic crack as the bullet goes past the microphone?
Yeah, exactly. The sound part is very hard to figure out, and I don't know that we're ever going to get much out of that.
And microphones are not great.
They're dumb instruments
at reproducing gunshots with a lot of fidelity anyway. There's
they're dumb instruments. They simply, reverberate and give you a sound, based on what the air does. So I'm not sure that we're going to get a lot from that, but I think the logistics part of it has got to be serious, because that's such an obvious sniper point.
Yeah,
and I don't know if they they thought they had it covered from another sniper point and they just weren't watching when this guy crawled up. Apparently it was the way he was crawling up, he wouldn't have been seen from far away because it's
a peaked roof,
crawling up a crested roof.
Yeah, it's a peaked roof.
So he may not have been seen crawling up there, but with the alerts, a few minutes beforehand, you got to think that there was at least some attention being paid to that area. And they did take him out pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, 2 things. Number 1, RFK III, a man whose family has had more than their share of experience with Secret Service failures, writes, unsecured rooftop 150 yards away. Multiple witnesses saying they were screaming at Secret Service and cops for 3 or 4 minutes as they watched the guy with the rifle crawl to the spot and line up his shot. Take your Secret Service and shove it up your ass. Prayers to Trump and his family. Well, yeah. I guess if you're a Kennedy, there may be some lingering resentment at the Secret Service.
I mean, his dad was killed by an assassin, so,
His grandfather.
I can respect that.
His grandfather.
His grandfather, sorry, yeah. No, wait a minute. I thought Bobby Kennedy was his father.
No, this is RFK the third. This is RFK
Oh, RFK
Jr.'s
the
son.
third. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm a little surprised that Trump didn't have his security team because he has one. I'm surprised that he didn't have his security team working in coordination. And I guarantee he's going to be doing that now. He's going to have his own security team.
Well, the thing is, the Secret Service are supposed to be the pros from Dover, right?
And frankly, I think they are. I have a lot of respect for the Secret Service.
But this I thought was really interesting. They had a press conference last night. Pennsylvania State Police was there. So they had PSP, ATF for whatever reason, and then of course the FBI, who's heading the investigation. And Lord, whatever the FBI comes up with, they'll be keen to share with all of us.
Oh yeah.
There were several questions about sort of the security arrangements. And the FBI guy said, and he had to say this, that's a question you'll need to ask the Secret Service, which would have been nice to be able to do, except that the Secret Service wasn't represented at that press conference.
That was definitely interesting and telling, I think.
Now, is it because they're being firewalled off from the investigation? Because, the Secret Service has investigated the Secret Service and found no wrongdoing. That wouldn't be very convincing. So have they just been blocked out of this investigation and now they're basically witnesses for the FBI investigation? Maybe, but it was very unusual that there wasn't a representative from USSS there to answer even fundamental questions.
Yeah, it's as people on the ground, they should have been present at that press conference.
There is another thing that I've heard, and I don't know for sure whether it's true or not, but it is certainly plausible. Who writes the rules of investigation or the rules of engagement for the military or for the federal agencies? Well, it's lawyers. And I have heard that...
What's wrong with that?
Well, I've heard that, what lawyers want to do is avoid potential problems. And yeah. I don't think that combat situations are very good venues for legalistic reasoning. But rules of engagement do exist. And what I've heard is that those counter sniper teams aren't allowed to open fire unless the sniper opens fire first.
Really?
And that's what I've heard. Now, I know what the justification for that would be, which is, you don't want to shoot a SWAT sniper from a sister agency who you just didn't know is there. So you have to actually see an immediate threat before you can take, before you can use lethal force. Because, look, there's no wounding in sniping. It's headshots.
Dead or not, right.
It's headshots. It's one shot, one kill. The United States government spends about $1 million per person teaching them how to shoot one gun. That's a lot of marksmanship training that teaches you how to shoot one gun. Usually something like the M70 or something like that. But the fact is, these guys are really good. And if they pop you, they're going to try to hit the cerebellum. They're going to try to hit the brainstem, because what that means is you have no time to do anything. It's just instant lights out. There's no response. There's no, you worry sometimes about muscular spasms causing someone to pull a trigger or whatever. That's you shoot at the brainstem, because that is instant lights out. There's no pass and go, no collecting $200. You go straight to hell. So I can see why you would tell the sniper teams, the counter sniper teams, you can't shoot unless there is an actual threat. But it seems to me that if somebody is up on a roof pointing a rifle not away from your candidate but towards them, that should be prima facie evidence that you have a threat that you might need to take out.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it appears it was the first shot that hit Trump in the ear. The very first shot. Well, let's say it drilled right through his eye. 1 inch to the right.
Half a centimeter to the right would have put it into a part of his brain that he would not recover from.
Yeah, so it seems that waiting for that first shot might, because that's probably the one that's going to be the kill shot.
Right.
Because after that, things start unraveling. Once you take that first shot, now you've got to recover, you've got to reset. Your first shot is generally going to be the most accurate one, especially if you have,
now your adrenaline's running and everything's tense, and
people may be shooting back.
Your aim is not going to be as sure as it was.
Yeah,
on that first breathing exercise.
Yeah, so. Did they wait until did they see? That's the thing that I really want to know. Did they see him? Now, look, it's possible that they didn't, right? You do have sectors assigned that you're supposed to cover. You can't see everything all at one time. The guy was crawling up a peaked roof. So until he got pretty close to being in position, he probably wasn't visible, at least not from their vantage point. So
not from their vantage point, no. But there were people in the crowd that saw them, and there was notice. Again, we have the AP report that says that one of the local cops confronted him. So that it had to be on the wires. It had to be on the communication channel. Hey, over here in sector whatever, there's a guy crawling around on the roof. Looks like he has a rifle. Oh, yeah, he does. He pointed it at me.
Well, they actually took him out super quick. I mean,
yeah, they did.
I mean, he was dead
That's why I wonder if they fired the first shot in trying to take him out. And although he doesn't seem like a very good shot, I wonder if that helped for him to miss.
I would have expected him to hit him because they were firing real sniper rifles on tripods. Mm-hmm. So I would have expected their first shot to actually take him out. So I'm really confused at the actual chain of events that occurred when they saw him, when they lined up on him, when they opened fire. Was there a rules of engagement restriction on them that kept them from opening fire first?
And why didn't they cover that rooftop? That's the most confounding thing to me, is why did they not have either somebody on it or direct eyes on it at all times? That had to be, given its position. What? How did they miss this? I don't understand how they could have possibly missed this.
Well, the thing is that the kid was dead probably 3 seconds after firing that first shot, which indicates
you can actually hear the second round of volleys that I think it's pretty clear are the ones that took him out. And you're right. It was like 2-3 seconds after the initial volley.
So it wasn't as if, there's a guy on the roof somewhere. I heard a shot. Maybe I should look for him through my scope and find him. That takes time. It appears that this guy was more or less in their sights when he fired because they took him out so quickly. I'm super confused as to how that could have happened. And all I can think of is that there is a rule of engagement, as I have heard that there was, that said you can't fire the first shot.
Maybe that's possible. I don't know.
Having been in the military and operated under some interesting rules of engagement, it would not surprise me. It is the kind of thing that law enforcement lawyers and military lawyers come up with to ensure that nobody gets in trouble and that we don't kill the people we're not supposed to kill.
Right.
The trouble is, while that's all easy to sit out and to game your way through in your nice air-conditioned office, when you're sitting up on top of a roof protecting the president or on top of a rooftop in Iraq as overwatch for your infantry squad, those rules of engagement are often not helpful.
Right. Well, we talk about that a lot, and let's face it, he still killed somebody.
Killed one and injured two others. Well, three others, including Donald Trump.
And that's not okay either. I mean, and especially the guy that got killed, I think he was a father, he was a husband, he was apparently a stand-up guy, well respected in his community. I mean, that's a great loss. It didn't matter if it was Trump or somebody else. I mean, you killed somebody.
And almost killed three other people.
Yeah.
Just collateral damage, which, by the way, reminds me of a joke that William F. Buckley made about the CIA's attempt to, well, we don't know it was the CIA, but there was an assassination attempt made on the then president of Indonesia, President Sukarno. And Buckley said it bears all of the hallmarks of a CIA assassination in that everyone in the room was killed except President Sukarno. And,
is that a hearkening back to the band pigs?
Yeah, and this is one of those things. The people who get killed, or who got killed, or severely wounded, they're still in the hospital, obviously. They're just innocent people who were just there to hear Donald Trump talk.
Support their candidate. That's all they were there doing.
And they're dead, and Donald Trump came within a centimeter, an inch of being dead himself. So, I guess we do eventually, especially since we're an hour and 15 minutes into this, I guess we do eventually have to talk about what does this mean for the presidential campaign.
I think it's over. I don't think there's any way Biden can recover from this. Or whoever they put up. Kamala Harris, it doesn't matter. None of them. And the Democratic Party is in the midst of destroying themselves. I've been really impressed over the last few weeks since the debate with Trump's message discipline, in that he hasn't gone on the attack. He hasn't gone in for the kill. He recognized somebody on his team either convinced him or he figured out on his own that, hey, you know what? Now's a great time to back off and not try to lead the news cycle.
It's Napoleon's maxim. When your enemy is in the middle of making a mistake, do not interfere.
Yeah.
Now, and I think the interesting
done that incredibly.
I think the interesting thing about this is that we are probably not going to hear another word about Joe Biden dropping out, at least not in the immediate future.
It's going to be, it was already really hard. We talked about that last week. It's like, and the time crunch is coming. They've literally got maybe a week or a week and a half at most to have Biden release the delegates, and then they can deal with whatever comes after that. But they don't have really much choice at this point. I think they're kind of locked in.
And by the way, they're now campaigning against this.
Against the picture?
Yeah, because this is the image. This guy just got shot. He's got blood on his face. Did he cower away? Did he weep and cry? begging for the Secret Service to get him out of there. No. In fact, I suspect that these Secret Service agents were pretty fairly pissed off
that he wasn't getting out of there quicker
at his unwillingness to let them shuffle him off of that stage.
I did think about that. And I was actually kind of waiting for the lefties to bring that up. He doesn't care about his Secret Service. He just wants to rebel in his own narcissism, and he put Secret Service lives at danger by holding up and then raising his fist and doing all this political stuff. What an asshole.
Okay, sure. Good luck with that. Yeah. Good luck with that, because
they're going to try it.
After years of him being called a coward who wouldn't go in the military, President Bone Spurs, and all of that, it's now pretty obvious that whatever other pleasant attributes he may lack, personal courage does not appear to be one of them.
He's not a wuss at all. And the thing is, he doesn't act like a wuss. I mean, he's just, he's in your face and over the top. But he also has that side of him that you see him, and every presidential candidate other than Joe Biden has really always had this, Republican and Democrat. They've always had that ability to just, glad hand with regular people. Especially with blue collar guys and women in the retail sector. They have that knack for making a personal connection with them. Everyone has always had that. Maybe not George H.W. Bush, but certainly since Reagan. Even Carter was pretty good at it. Clinton was a master of it. George W. Bush, Bill Clinton was fucking amazing.
Yeah, okay. Nobody is in Bill Clinton's league when it comes to that kind of stuff.
He was just the best. He was the GOAT. Obama was great at this, even though he's such an aloof, arrogant, fucking erudite pisshole. Biden has none of that. He has the, hey, Jack, the thing. I mean, he's got that sort of thing going, but everybody's like, what the fuck are you doing?
By the way, we talked a lot about the rhetoric and stuff like that, but Donald Trump, I mean, if he's smart, that event yesterday takes this completely off the table.
Yep.
Because every time someone says something like this, especially if it's Joe Biden, Donald Trump's response should be, and this is why I got
that
shot.
Picture.
This is why I got shot.
Right.
All of your talk about democratic norms and stuff like this is the kind of rhetoric that tells people it's okay to take the law into their own hands. You didn't pull the trigger, Joe, but you certainly created an environment in which pulling it was more acceptable than it should be. And every time there is an ad like this that pops up, Trump's response should be, this is how you get people shot. You want to talk about unity and you want to talk about democratic norms, and Joe has always been big on the norms, hasn't he? At least he says so. Okay, fine. Then observe the norms, because this is the kind of rhetoric, not mine. You may not like what I say and you may not like my policies, but this is a direct, well, not direct, but this is an indirect incitement to violence. You're creating a picture of me as a person who will single-handedly destroy the country. Why would it surprise you that someone would decide to take the law into their own hands? And by the way, I think that that would be a line of argumentation that a lot of people would start to think about and agree with. You want to talk about what is unacceptable? That is unacceptable.
So tomorrow the RNC starts in Milwaukee, and I guess it's 2 days later or 3 days later, Donald Trump's going to be the nominee. His message as the successful nominee is going to be very important. And taking heed of your advice, I think, would be smart for him to not overplay his hand, but to just deal it straight down the middle. And hey, look, we're not trying to kill the other guy. We're just trying to beat him at the ballot box. This is what happens when, the other side goes too far. They've gone way too far. I've already been president. I didn't do any of these things that they accused me of doing. I didn't try to overturn anything. And yet they still try to kill me.
And at noon on January 21st, I walked out of the Oval Office.
Yeah, and that's the other part of it. What's going to be interesting, I think, just kind of set up a little bit for let's see. Well, I won't be able to do next week. We'll talk about that later. But for the next podcast, how are the Democrats going to accept a Trump presidency again? Knowing quite well that it's probably going to lead to a Ron DeSantis presidency, JD Vance, it could be a lot of different people. How are the last time Trump was elected, on Inauguration Day, we had riots throughout DC. Burned cars, burned cop cars, burned limousines, attacks on police, attacks on everybody. How is the left going to react to this?
It's not.
Which is why I have great doubts about whether or not there will be another election. It's gotten so bad that I don't think either side can accept losing anymore. It becomes an existential crisis.
Well, one of the problems whenever you paint your political opponent as an existential threat to your country's way of life is that if he does win, it doesn't matter if that is true or not. Because people, as I love to say, people enjoy being propagandized. Being propagandized is easy. It's convenient. It tells you what the acceptable range of views are in your social circle. It tells you what the acceptable opinions are that you can express. It doesn't require that you think about what is really true, because all of that thinky pain is hard. And once you have been propagandized to believe that Donald Trump will be a dictator on day one, why would it surprise anyone if the people who believe that respond accordingly? That's why this is so dangerous and why it is so destructive to democratic norms. And it's why Joe Biden, who despite his say, I'm going to return us to norms, is this that? Is this the return to norms? We're not having a debate.
Which norms?
Yeah, we're not having
Roman Republic in 44 BC.
Yeah, we're not having a debate on policy now. We're having a debate, whether we want to have it or not, about the future of America. And as far as the Democrats are concerned, there is nothing, once he gets elected, no institution, no popular expressed will ever stay Donald Trump from becoming a dictator. So why wouldn't there be violence? Why wouldn't there be a lack of acceptance? They've been told by the President of the United States that we are an inch away from electing a dictator.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you accept that?
Right. Again, as I expressed earlier, American people just want to be left alone. The concept of a dictator, and again, this applies to both the left and the right. We basically want to be left the fuck alone. A dictator is not in our best interests.
And
so
even if
you create an existential crisis in this, and a moral crisis in this sort of situation, people are going to react.
And I think even on the right, most people realize that even if I elected Donald Trump, thinking if I thought Donald Trump might be a dictator, even if he promised to do all the things I wanted, 2016, prosecuting Hillary Clinton, whatever it might have been, which, by the way, he didn't. You always have to have in the back of your mind, well, once we have the dictator, I can't really stop him from coming after me. So I think there are very few voters on the right, who believe that Trump will be a dictator, and who would willingly elect a dictator into power. Whatever other parallels, and look, there are many that we could probably talk about for quite a long time, about the United States in 2024 and the Weimar Republic in 1930, the willingness to have someone tell you what to do is still not quite a big part of the right wing in this country. The right wing in this country is I would even
say the left wing is sort of not really okay with that either.
Yeah, but
I think it's an American thing. It's very American.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the left wing that would be voting for Donald Trump. Of course, it would be the right wing. Yeah. In Germany, let's go to 1932, a year in which they held 2 national elections. Because they couldn't.
Yeah, the enabling acts weren't until 1933.
Yeah, in 1932, they had 2 national elections. In the first election in March, they gave the Nazis 38% of the vote, somewhere around there. Franz von Papen could not put together a stable coalition. So Major General Kurt von Schleicher got a hold of Hindenburg, told him he could, and had Hindenburg call another election in November. And in that election, the Nazis got about 32% of the vote. So their vote share actually died. Kurt von Schleicher, sorry, it's too much of a parallel with a real person. Kurt von Schleicher could not put together a coalition in November, and thus Franz von Papen, who was really pissed off at being stabbed in the back by Kurt Schleicher, went into Hindenburg and said, look, I can do this. Let's make Hitler chancellor, make me vice chancellor. We'll give the Nazis 3 out of the 8 cabinet offices, or the equivalent of cabinet office, ministries, and we'll be able to keep Adolf Hitler from doing anything super crazy. And that's basically how Hitler got appointed chancellor by Hindenburg. The important thing that's
the people the part that people always forget, that no, Hitler was not actually elected.
Yeah, Hitler was never elected to anything, not even the Reichstag. The interesting thing about those 2 elections was that even though the Nazis had the plurality of the votes, much of the other voting were going to other, we'll call them right-wing parties in Germany at the time.
Non-communist, non-socialist.
And unlike the United States, those parties in Germany actually wanted to have a king. Sure, they liked Paul von Hindenburg, big World War I hero. It's great to have him as president. But you know what would be even better? Having the Kaiser. I mean, not the last Kaiser's kid, because he was a reprobate, but his grandson, perhaps, being the Kaiser. What they didn't want was a republic. What they didn't want was a full democracy, except a limited parliamentary democracy, like they had in the empire, they were not looking for democracy at all. That electorate wanted to be told what to do. And by God, sometimes in a democracy, you get what you want good and hard. And the Germans did. They got told what to do. That's not how the American version of democracy works. And there is no constituency on the left or the right for any sort of dictatorship in this country. And,
I would agree.
And frankly, based on the way he acted when he was actually president, as personally irritating as I sometimes found him, the fact was he displayed fidelity to the Constitution. So as, Thomas Henry or Patrick Henry in his famous Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death speech said, "I know of no lamp by which to light the path of the future, but by the past." And based on the past, I don't see Donald Trump as being a dictator. And by the way, even if he was, he's 78, by the way. Let's just point that out.
Yeah, he just turned 78, yeah. And so he's a lamed up president from the beginning. Everybody knows, at least those who are thinking clearly, that he's simply setting up the next president, who I'm thinking would be DeSantis. There's a lot of speculation he's going to pick J.D. Vance as his vice president. I think that's a mistake, taking a senator. But I don't think DeSantis would be great as a vice president. I don't think taking him out of Florida helps. I think he needs to pick somebody else who's a little bit more expendable at their current position and more in line with what he wants. Kristi Noem might be a possible. She's kind of weak, but she'll go along with the Trump agenda.
Although she's from South Dakota, she delivers nothing to Donald Trump.
Not in term, but I mean, the vice presidents don't really make that much difference anyway. I'm over the conventional wisdom that vice presidents make any difference whatsoever. Yeah, they did back in like the 60s and 70s when you pick somebody from a state who you were a little unsure about. I don't think that makes any difference now.
Counterpoint. One thing about electing or selecting a governor is that they already have a pre-existing political organization in the state. So that does help you out. However, then you have to find a governor of your party from a swing state that you think you need so that you can capitalize on the political machine.
But I don't think any of those things are in play here. I mean, okay, so
yeah, all the people he would pick would be from states he's going to win anyway. So yeah,
maybe Youngkin, my governor. He's got a year left, I think, and so Virginia is famously one and done governor state. And if he were to take that vice president's slot, then first black woman would become the next governor, or well, at least the sitting governor, and then stand for election. I love her. She's awesome. Former Marine. She's a badass. I think that might be his best pick. I'm not happy about it. I'd rather keep Youngkin here, but that might be his best pick. I think that could help him pick up Virginia, And if he's got Virginia, I think he's going to win Pennsylvania. Michigan and Wisconsin.
Look, I have to say, it is kind of weird that for the first time in a long time, we are going into a convention without actually knowing who the president wants to have as his running mate.
Yeah, usually it's announced before the convention starts. You're right.
And there's been no announcement from the Trump campaign. The convention starts tomorrow. This is going to be way more like a convention from the 60s or the 70s. I don't even
There's
know.
been so much happening that it's hard to figure out, like, what's my best bet? You know?
And I don't even know if, look, he is enough of a control freak that I think he has a preferred candidate. But maybe
He's type A at the wazoo.
yeah, but I mean, maybe the wise course of action here would be to say, I'll take whoever the convention decides and actually have the convention pick his vice president. I don't think he's going to do that. And I'm afraid that he is going to pick J.D. Vance, which I think is a bad idea.
I think it's a really bad idea. Not that I have anything against J.D. Vance. I don't like taking a Senate seat away. I think that's just an awful choice. You don't take Senate seats away.
Yeah.
Not when you're
especially
struggling
one that's got,
to get control of the Senate.
Especially when you have a senator that has 4 more years.
Yes. I would think that's a really bad choice.
Yeah, picking a first-term senator as your VP is not a great choice. I mean, you know, J.D. Vance has done what is necessary to assure Donald Trump that he will be a loyal vice president, I suppose.
Hey, look, I like J.D. Vance. I think he's a great candidate. It's not that I don't want him to be president or vice president. It's that right now he occupies a really important position as a senator from Ohio.
From chat, please know Burgum is the only one worse.
Yeah, Burgum. Yeah. I mean, he's not a bad guy or anything. He has no oomph whatsoever. I mean, literally nothing. And, well, that's who he picked as his last VP was Pence. It was also kind of I don't have a lot.
It might not be the best. It might not be something that I would think at this point in time, if I was the nominee. It might not be the best for me in terms of personnel and people that I can work with and what have you. And this, what seems to be a need to have some measure of loyalty demonstrated to him. But I think it would be a masterstroke if Donald Trump walked into that convention and said, I leave it to you to democratically choose who my vice presidential running mate should be.
Who's wish casting now?
Yeah, that is wish casting. But I think it would be a masterstroke because also remember,
I'm with you.
He's contending with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what better way to make this seem like a bunch of bullshit than just to say, yeah, you know what? Let the party choose who they think would be best situated to serve as vice president. And whoever it is, I will accept the party's choice and we will march together to victory in November.
Well, what if it's Haley?
Then it's Haley. Because, again...
that would be a bad mistake.
Sure, maybe it will.
Although, actually, Haley as vice president and only as vice president would be good. She is an attack dog. She was awesome as the ambassador to the UN. She's got a sharp tongue and she's got a sharp mind. She's a squishy Republican, but she is smart and she is formidable. I don't see her as presidential material. But maybe that makes it easier for DeSantis to win in a primary.
I don't even think that the convention would pick her. And in fact, she wasn't even going to show up at the GOP convention until the events of yesterday.
Yeah.
But even if
actually, I think that's really good that she's going to.
But even if they did, at the end of the day, she'll be the vice president. And aside from George H.W. Bush, we have not elected a sitting vice president in this country since 1820. Because people just tend not to elect the sitting vice president. George H.W. Bush got a big plus from being the vice president for Ronald Reagan.
For Ronald Reagan, yes, absolutely.
And he was elected to be Ronald Reagan's third term.
Except for the voodoo economics.
Yeah, except for the voodoo economics. That is the exception. The rule has been sitting vice presidents don't get elected. So There is an argument that you can make that if he did that and they picked somebody like her, it might doom the Republican Party in 2028. Well, maybe. That assumes that she would get the nomination in 2028. Plus,
I don't think she would.
Plus, the fact that she is vice president means that she will simply be the Spiro T. Agnew of the, Trump
and she would be
administration.
Good at that. She would be really good at that.
Sure, she would wake up in the morning, she would inquire as to the state of the president's health, and then she would go off to say awful things about the Democrats and their policies, which is exactly what we would expect them to do. That's what a vice president does.
The vice president is supposed to be the attack bulldog.
Yes, and that's all they do, with the exception, of course, of attending the funerals of foreign dignitaries.
I'm president of the Senate.
And quite frankly, whoever his vice president is, I mean, unless it's somebody who he's really close to and really trusts, I doubt will have a seat at the policy table in any significant way anyway, because, the vice presidency, as John Nance Garner once said, Speaker of the House, when he was offered the vice presidency isn't worth a bucket of warm shit. So who cares who the vice president is?
I'll take it.
Trump is going to be president for one term. He can completely ignore his vice president. After all, most presidents have. So it doesn't do anything but make him look good, and it stops that dictator talk also in its tracks, because now he's telling the Republican Party, you choose. I am going to be your nominee for president, and I will select.
I love your idea, but you and I both know that the chances of that happening are zero.
Oh, yeah, he's not going to do that in a million years. But I think that would be the smart move. And if they pick somebody you don't like, that's fine.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, if they pick somebody you don't like, that's fine. Let them stew at their residence in the National Observatory for 4 years. Who cares? They're the vice president. If you have a heart attack, well, hopefully they can take over from you.
I live in the National Observatory.
Yeah. And look, if the party picks them, then the party will assume that they're picking someone who is qualified to be president on day one. So that, I think, would be the smartest thing he could do right now. At this point, he has some momentum, and I think that he would be able to carry that momentum. And nobody is going to talk about Joe Biden.
He really does have a lot of power right now, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
That's an interesting train of thought, because I think you're really right. Everything, the momentum is all in his favor. He can, I think, push whatever he wants at this point, if he does it the right way. But he's going to get a lot of latitude.
Sure. I mean, even though it was only a chunk knocked out of his ear, the guy got shot in the head. He's got,
dude, it was just your ear. What the fuck? Stop being a baby.
Yeah. Well, I expect we'll hear that before too long, too. But that's what I would do as far as this vice president thing. I think it's been smart that he hasn't announced one yet. I think it would be even smarter if he let the convention pick it. Will he? No, of course not. He already knows who he wants to have there and who he wants to work with. I think that
I don't think he does. I really don't think he does. I don't think he's made up his mind yet.
Well,
I think he's kind of famous for making up his mind at the last minute. He is gathering information and trying to figure out what works best. I don't think he has his mind made up at all. I guarantee he's got probably down to 3 candidates, maybe 2. But I don't think Trump's going to announce until he is fully convinced that he's making the right decision in his mind.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. Time is fleeting because we nominate the vice president.
I mean, it starts tomorrow. RNC starts tomorrow.
And we nominate the vice president the night before we nominate the president. So he has, at this point, he has 48 hours.
Yep.
To make that decision if he makes the decision. Now,
I like your idea, though. I think that it's a brilliant idea.
Well, thank you. I do, too.
I agree with me.
Beyond that, I mean, the vice president issue is a relatively small problem. It seems to me that Trump's big problem is now that it looks like he has a fairly good chance at winning, who in the world, and let's be frank and let's admit, there was some level of chaos in his appointments in his first administration.
Yeah. Do you think he actually learned anything from that?
I don't know. But here's what I do know. That is a conversation that we probably are not going to be able to have today, and that we are going to have to hold off with until the next one, because we are now pushing close to 2 hours on this podcast.
Holy crap. Who knew this would take so long?
Yeah. So we will have to pick that up at some later time. Michael, it's always a pleasure. We'll talk to you next time.
All right, buddy. Love you.
Love you too, man. Well, there you have it. This podcast is done. Thanks for listening. Hope you'll be here next time, although apparently not next week, but soon, probably 2 weeks from now. Have a great couple of weeks. We'll see you next time. So long.